going on perhaps for ever. I was telling to my friend, when I go deep, of course, what all I have said so far, honestly, I think is not even a drop of the ocean that is in front of me. Okay. But when I find out those things, many times I have a mixed feelings of both agony as well as ecstasy. Agony because nobody wants, ecstasy because there is so much there. And if it is unearthed some more, what more they can be. But many of us think that there is nothing for us to learn in ancient India because Britishers have made us deliberately. See, I will give you an example. Suppose you are going out, somebody picks your packet, he takes 100 rupees or 500 rupees. You worry for some time, afterwards you don't bother because you have the ability to earn those 500 rupees. Suppose somebody robs you of that ability of earning 500 rupees, then you are gone forever. What other people did, whether it is Dutch, French or all those people, they robbed our physical wealth. It is Britishers who wanted to rob us of our intellectual wealth also, always digging into our head, you are inferior, then our entire self-confidence is gone. So in the face of fantastic knowledge, we think there is something fishy even in this also. Like a man with a tattered cloth, if there is some sound of jingling sound in his pocket, he will think it is only some pieces of metal, or if there is a stone, it is only ordinary stone. We fail to realize they are gemstones. We fail to realize these metal pieces are nothing but pure, simple gold. If they need not be nuggets of gold, at least there will be trinkets of gold. So this is the greatest dangerous thing that the Britishers did. They have robbed us of our self-confidence. To think beyond a thing, no, nothing is possible for us. As I told you, there cannot be anything more dangerous. That's why remember I told you, most of us think that we were only human forms and Britishers made us human beings. Now, discoveries in the field of science, discoveries in the field of botany, there have been plenty. First of all, you must understand why this concept that you are inferior came into existence. I am going to tell you what is a country, what is a nation. And I am sure many of you think, what difference there is? A country otherwise is also known as a nation. No, there is a deeper meaning to this. India is not a country. India is a nation. What is the difference? It is Britishers again who said this. After all, we were several countries. Mysore was there, Hyderabad was there, our Rashtrakuta kings, all these people were there. So we were a different nation, quarreling amongst yourselves. We made you united, we made you into a country. Unfortunately, they don't realize our concept was much more deep. Our psyche was much more deep. Is it clear? We had a cultural ethos. If India were not to be a single nation, is it clear? I will give the definition a little later. Why did Shankaracharya go to all four pieces of different countries, four corners of different countries? Why did he establish mutts? And all our centers of reverence, is it clear? They are always linked. When you go to Kashi, Varanasi, you are also enjoying that you must come down to Rameshwaram and mix this and that. Is this not a concept of a nation? Otherwise, why is it this way? 4 Jyotirmatas, is it clear? And all the 12 Jyotirlingas, were they concentrated in only one corner? They are present there in different parts of our country, parts of our nation, whatever it is. And when you take bath, do we mention the river only that flows in our backyard? We mention all the rivers flowing in different parts of this geographical piece of land called India. That means our understanding of what is a nation goes much beyond a country. What is a country? A country is a normal geographical piece of a land, may consist of different types of people, different cultures of people, but controlled by a single administrative machinery. That is a country. Whereas a nation need not have a political configuration, but it has cultural ethos. It is the cultural thread that binds us all together. Otherwise, there could be different states, different countries were there. But why did Shankaracharya go? And right from the beginning, whether it is Ramayana or Mahabharata, do they explain only Karnataka, explain only Andhra? Sri Rama travelled throughout the so-called country or the nation. Is it clear? He was born in Ayodhya. Is it clear? Went down up to Sri Lanka. Even today, I do not know whether people know, Ram Setu still exists. I have heard people telling that quite some time back, people used to walk from India to Sri Lanka on this bridge. And now these people say it is all man-made, recent, not very old, and it can be destroyed also. And, in Tamil Nadu, Karunatha says this can be destroyed to have a thorough passage. And what horrible language he has used to Karunatha. When we say Ramasetu, why do you call it Ramasetu? from which college did you obtain engineering degree? He has made this statement.
Yeah, correct.
Now, I think this kind of an insult to revered historical figures can come only from this unfortunate country and in no other country. That's why I tell you, the present generation, of course, I don't want to blame everyone, there cannot be more ungrateful rich than anybody else who do not want to think of their country. And we don't seem to realize what a rich cultural heritage we have got. So, India should not be called as a country because our people had thought that a single political administrative machinery is not necessary. When cultural ethos runs throughout this. That's why I told you, we say when we are taking bath. Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri, Jaleswar, Siridhimpuru. All rivers are sacred for us. Not only just Ganga. Gange, Yamune, Chaiva, Godavari, Saraswati. You are standing down in your bathroom, down near Kanyakumari. Yet you say Ganga, Yamuna. Why? It belongs to you also. Is this not the concept of a nation? Then is it right that only Britishers united? Britishers only subjugated? Britishers only enslaved all these things. So this concept of a nation we must have. India need not have been a single country, is it clear? It was a single nation right from the beginning and it remains to be so. All that Britishers did was they tore us into pieces, is it clear? And then did not put even a proper concept. All the 536 principalities, you can quarrel among yourselves, that is what they did and they have left. Nothing more than that they have done. Now coming back to the actual scientific discourse I am telling you, if somebody wants to study the botanical history, I am bringing it down after all these discoveries, very clear. Three kinds of information are available. One is architectural from the temple architecture, another is archaeological, and the third is literature. For my purpose, I have used only the third kind of literature, the literature survey. As I have already told you, is it clear? Many of the manuscripts are not available, so it will be very difficult. And for this, of course, we should not always blame only the outsiders. We also should be blamed. For example, suppose there is a manuscript, Sanskrit manuscript of Talapatra. What do? Keep it in the sanctum sanctorum, put haladi and kumkum, more and more that, worship without caring to know what it contains. That is also the most unfortunate part of it. We never want to be benefited from that. Is it clear? Alright, show your reverence. Is it clear? Pray, but pray. No, find out what is there in that also. Now coming to the literature, I have classified in my own way Sanskrit literature into three. Sacred literature, lay literature and technical literature. Sacred literature includes the Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the epics, and then Puranas also. When we say Purana, normally we slight when we say, suppose somebody talks balderdash, enough of your Purana, you see. It is not correct. Purana is not something that consists of nonsensical information. Again, in the literature I am telling you, Indian literature is different and world literature is different. In world literature, there are only two things. One is mythology and another is history. There is no connection between the two. In mythology, you revere all those figures and then suddenly come down to history. In the Indian context, there is a kind of a literature which links these two. It is mythology, Purana and then history. Is it clear? Plenty of evidences are there in Purana to link mythology as well as history. And the second type of literature, apart from the sacred literature, is the lay literature of prose, poetry and drama of Kalidasa, Bhasa and others. And the third literature is technical literature, either Ayurvedic literature or Vriksha Ayurveda. When you say Vriksha Ayurveda, many people say, is it a part of Ayurveda? Vriksha Ayurveda is not just Ayurveda, or just as Ayurveda is not just medicine. Ayurveda is the science of life. It does not tell you how to cure your ailment. It tells you how to prevent your illness first. And only, unfortunately, if you get it, it can be cured. So Vriksha Ayurveda is also the science of body. Now, right from that time I am telling you of Rig Veda, how botanical knowledge was inherent. Obviously, for rishis it was a necessity. They were totally dependent on plants. Is it clear? And they revered the plants. Why they should revere? Suppose you say, alright, if there is something you take use of it, why do you revere? Why should you worship? Is it not highly selfish? See, for example, I am telling you, there is God, of course, in the photo you worship. But don't you also call your elders, suppose there is a grandmother, grandparent, father, don't you also call them as equivalent to God? Because when you derive maximum benefit from them, of course, your parents, your father may not be God to me, but for you, because you are deriving maximum, your very existence is because of them. Likewise, when we know what is the use of the plants, how is it anything wrong in revering them when they are giving so much to you without expecting anything else? Show me an organism, show me a bee, is it clear, which will give you back fruits when you throw stones. Only trees can do it. Only trees can do it. That is why we revere them. All these are mentioned in many of the Vedas. And the third kind of literature I told you is Vrikshara. Now, I will give you a few examples from the Vedic literature. At the time of Rigveda itself, many of the plants and plant parts were known. For example, Nyagroda was the name for the banyan tree. Right? Nyagroda means that which grows down. There can't be anything growing down in a tree. It is the prop roots that were growing down. That means they observe those things. See, when I analyze some of these things, I analyze truly as a botanist. I don't want to analyze only as a Hindu or only as an Indian citizen. Because I want to unearth the fact which is typically there or not. You must have heard of the famous Soma plant. In fact, recently I gave a lecture on Soma plant in Bharati Vidya Bhavan. There was a Veda Samvada program some 1 or 2 weeks back, I think, in ISKCON. At that time, many people asked me what is Soma plant, because many people believe that our rishis were Bharan alcoholics. Because some of them say with irreverence, I'm not telling you. Then what were they doing? After their parents or whatever it is, they used to drink the alcoholic drink, the Soma juice, Soma, and in the inebriated state, they used to babble something, and they are now called as Vedas. Again, there cannot be anything more nonsensical than this. I am a botanist. I have done some research. Every rishi never used to hog 4 times a day. Correct? They used to eat once in a day, or once in a week, once in a fortnight, or sometimes some of them once in 40 days and all. So obviously, they were in such a highly nutritious plant which keep them physically fit for this period. Is it clear? That they were searching for that plant. And many such, of course I don't say Soma is a single plant. The many groups of plants which used to yield nutritive juice, highly nutritive juice, were called the Soma plants. Suppose somebody used to say, this is an alcoholic drink. A juice from a plant or a plant extract turns alcoholic after it is exposed to air for some time, because microbes are there in the air and they turn the juice alcoholic. Is it clear? Before that, it's only nutritive juice. So it is foolish to say that they used to keep it for some time. Is it clear? And only then it turns alcohol. They used to drink, getting inebriated. Only the irreverent ones can talk like that. And this Soma plant, a group of plants were there. Is it clear? Even today, one can do that. All of them have highly nutritive juice. Now, I don't want to go so much together. What is the necessity for them to identify the plants? Obviously, they were using twigs and twiglets for the Homa, Havana, and Yaga. They cannot pick out any and every plant. Is it clear? They used to select certain plants also. Recently, I have done research on this bunny tree or bunny tree. It is Acacia ferruginea. Do you know its Sanskrit name? In Kannada, it is called bunny. Sanskrit name is Vanhi. Do you know what is Vanhi? Vanhi means fire. I have done some research with comparative plants. Per unit tissue, it has more calories, caloric value. That is why they were using it for sacrificial rites, so that fire can be produced very early. And do you know, there were separate people who used to produce fire every morning. I am going to publish one paper shortly. Who is the first discoverer of fire? Not the first person who has stolen fire. In Greek mythology, there is a story called Prometheus. Do you know who was Prometheus? He was one taken to heaven. He saw the fire there. What did he do? In the quiet of the night, he stole the fire and brought it to earth. That is their discovery. I am not joking, it's a part of history. Prometheus, even he checked the literature. So they say he discovered fire. He did not discover fire, he stole fire. Whereas the group of rishis called Angirasa, is it clear? They used to produce fire. Already it is mentioned as to how you have to keep all this wood. Where it is clear? How you should turn every day morning and produce fire. Now tell me who discovered fire and who stole the fire. But even today we say fire, first name comes is Prometheus. So they were using all these plants judiciously and properly. Now coming to Mahabharata, let me not take too much time about Vedas. In Mahabharata, there is a Parva called Shanti Parva. Have you exceeded with them already?
No.
Right. In Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, 2 rishis were sitting and discussing. Who are they? Bhrigu and Bharadwaja. Normally, When you think of rishis as the religious people, one eating every day, one eating once in 40 days, what should they discuss? What did you eat today? Obviously. Were there any leaves available for you today? Or some rishi has already eaten them? Or another person would say, no, for another 20 days I cannot eat because I eat only in 20 days. This should be the discussion. But do you know what do they discuss? I will give evidences. I have presented this in International Botanical Congress in Germany. Bhrigu at Bharadwaja. Bhrigu is a doubtful person. He is a doubting Thomas. He says, when I look at plants, they don't talk back to me. They don't respond to me. Is it clear? If I break their twigs, they don't bother at all. Then how do you say they have life? I think they are inanimate. They don't have life at all. In order to convince Bhrigu, Bharadwaja gives in a series of just 7 verses I am giving you, entire characters of plants. And at the end he says, plants have life also. I will just quote only 2 verses. He says that plants can feel. A little later I will tell you how this sowed the seeds of plant neurobiology, which is the current area of research in USA, of which I am a member. The plants breathe. They respond to bad water. They respond to air. And then he says how plants take in water, how they produce food. I will give you mention 2 verses. Vaktrelotpala nalena yathordvam jalamadade tatha pavanasya muktah padeh pivati padapa. Now, in modern science, experimentation is important. Experiment, observation and inference. When Bhrigu says, when Bharadwaja says plants are like they take in water, you know what he says? You cut the petiole of lotus with holes, is it clear? You dip it in water. You suck with whatever force water enters into your mouth, with the same force water enters into plant also. Is it not a fact? Now, when you suck water, is it clear? Where is the force? Force is not near the water. Force is away from the water. When you suck, a sort of vacuum is created, air is removed, and into that vacuum water enters. Now, there is a theory proposed by 2 German plant physiologists, Dickson and Joly, right? In 17th century, even today we teach in colleges, transpiration pull theory of Dickson and Joly, or upward movement theory. Is it clear? What do they say? In the leaves, when there is evaporation due to transpiration, that tension travels down up to the roots and water enters into it. Is it not something like, I don't say anticipation of transpiration pull theory, is it not original discovery? If you want, is it a cock and bull story? Is there no evidence? Experimental evidence they give. Cut the petiole of lotus. Vaktrena utpala nalena yatha urdhvam jalam adade tatha pavana samyuktaha padai pivati padapa. And look at the beautiful name they give for it is padapa, that which sucks with the help of a tree. The force is not near the water. That is why you see it is often said that plants absorb roots not by the roots but through the roots. There is a difference in the state. By the roots means the force is generated. Through the roots means roots are only a conduit. Is this not transpiration pull theory? No. Again, Bhrigu says, alright, so much water enters into the plant. What happens to this water? Again, there is a reply. Says, Tena kajjala madattau jarayat agrimadataihi ahara parimanashchas teho vruddhischa jayate. He says, the water that comes up gets cooked by the fire of sun and air, and because of this, food is prepared, plants grow very well. Is this not the concept of photosynthesis? Even to this moment, this was supposed to be discovered by Inzelhouse. Now please tell me, persons who discuss this, are they religious people? Are they superstitious people? Are they not scientists? Can there be a better definition of photosynthesis than this one? When was this? Giving a highly conservative date for Mahabharata. Some people go up to 3,000 or 4,000 years. Forget all those things. 1,500 years. This was discovered by Inzelhouse or Dickson and Joly. 16th century means 1,600 plus 1,500. 3,100 years early. 3.1 millennia early. By whom? By 2 religious people, not scientists. Because rishis means religious people. What business they had discuss about photosynthesis? Whether there is photosynthesis or not, they should be satisfied if there are leaves and fruits. Again, let me come back to 2 books. books of 5th century. 5th century. One is Amarakosha, of which I am doing a project. He mentioned this also. Indian National Science Academy has given me a project to unearth all the facts mentioned in Amarakosha. It's a Sanskrit lexicon about botany. Fantastic amount of description, taxonomy of the plants, characteristic feature, nomenclature. You ask for it, it is there in that. In the course of next 2 years, I am going to prepare a book on it. Amarakosha is Sanskrit lexicon belonging to 5th century AD. Right? In this, there is a Varga called Vanoshadeva. There is also a Varga called Vani Varga. I will concentrate only on Vanoshadeva. In this Vanoshadeva Varga, different types of plants, distribution, classification, literature, everything is there. Different types of forests are described. Atav, Yaranyam, Vipinam, Gaharam, Kananam, Hanam, Maharanya, Maranyani, Aramastu, Graharamastu, Nishkutaha. And then there is also a mention of what is known as Kritrimavana. Now, park you understand, forest you understand, what is the artificial forest? I unearthed it and found out that it is a silvicultural practice. Growing forest for timber in a particularly specific pattern. And they were mentioning the algae also. The algae was called Jalanili. And mushrooms were identified. They were calling it as Chatra, Ati Chatra Palagna. Chatra means small umbrella. And if there are some people who know botany, you know that sometimes some plants grow on other plants or trees. Is it clear? For ordinary people, plants that grow on other plants are just plants. But there are two kinds of plants as botanists have understood. One is a parasite, another is an epiphyte. A parasite sucks food also apart from shelter. Whereas an epiphyte does not suck any food but uses only as a shelter. Is it clear? Here, Vanda, Vrikshadani, Vrikshuraha, Jivanti, Ketipi is mentioned in 4 names for both these. What is Vrikshadani? I checked the commentary. Vrikshadani means Janma Vrikshavapi Hantiti Vrikshadani. That which kills the tree of origin is Vrikshadani. It has to be a parasite. Is it clear? What is Vriksharaha? Vrikshe Rohati Vriksharaha. That which simply, literally or metaphorically climbs over a tree. That is an epiphyte. Now tell me, is this not a beautiful description of a parasite and epiphyte? When? 5th century. And mind you, Amarsimha was not a botanist. Amarakosha was not a botany textbook. This was an ordinary lexicon of commonly used terms. If the common knowledge of a plant was so much among the common people, is it clear? Because there is a necessity. Otherwise, he put together only popular terms. That was in regular use. That means there is a necessity for the people to understand, because a parasite ultimately kills a tree also, they had to remove that one. So if this was the common knowledge of ordinary lexicon, where Amarsimha was forced to use this, what must have been the botanical knowledge of botanists? I leave it for your imagination. For example, description of plants. You know, taxonomy deals with description of plants. Once while I was studying Amarakosha, I was a Sanskrit student. Unfortunately, in Sanskrit Pathshalas, Amarakosha meaning is not given. Very unfortunate. You are only made to recite it by rote and remember and repeat it like a parrot. I never realized that Amarakosha is a thing. In fact, I used to deride Amarakosha because we have to chant only the shlokas. Otherwise, there is a huge gain with the teacher. But never did I know that Amarakosha is such a mind of fantastic information. Is it clear? Country fig you have seen. Ati it is called. Is it clear? There are 5 names for this in the Amarakosha. Audumbare, Jantupano, Yagnango, Hemadugdaka. Once, as a normal bottle, why so many names for one plant? Is it not a matter of confusion? And then it occurred to me, if you go to the etymology of these words, is it clear? It will give out a meaning. What is Audumbara? Ullarita Ambara iti Audumbara. Ambara means cloth. There cannot be a cloth coming out of a tree. It must be bark peeling out of a tree. That is why it's called Audumbara. Jantupala. You cut the fruit, you will get worms inside. Yajnanga, the twiglets were used for sacrificial rites. Hemadugda, a truly botanical character. You break open a twiglet, a latex comes, not completely white, golden colored latex. Hemadugda. Each one of the characters might be there in different plants, but put together, it gives a reasonably good taxonomic description for that plant. This is the theory I am proposing in my book. Audumbare, Jantupano, Yajnango, Hemadugda. This is why a number of plants are there. Saptaparni, Vishalatva, Sharado, Vishamachara. Saptaparni, 7 leaves. Vishalatva, wide bark. Sharada, flowers during Sharad Ritu. Vishamachedana, the dissection of the leaflets is unequal. So in this way we can build a beautiful taxonomic history for the plant. And again you see in the taxonomic development there are two phases. One is called the alpha taxonomy, another is called the omega taxonomy. In alpha taxonomy only morphological characters are taken into consideration. In omega taxonomy all characters are marshaled together, biochemical characters, ecological association, all characters are put together. I have found several examples of omega taxonomy also in Vanoshanika. So this is a beautiful book. Finally, I would like to mention about Vrikshayurveda of Parashara. Who is Parashara, I will tell you. What has he discovered, I will tell you. And I will also tell you one of my experience in 1981 in the Sydney Botanical Congress when I mentioned about Parashara. You know, normally in modern days, as we think, we arrange symposia, conferences, seminars, etc. so that the scholars will speak and others will read. This is not a foreign phenomenon for Indians. The world's first medicinal plant symposium was organized at the foothill of Himalayas and the chairman was Sage Bharadwaj. At that time, assembled in a forest called Chaitarata, a number of rishis, a number of scientists were asked to study and give out of information about all basic knowledge of science that is needed for the happy and healthy living of human beings. Is it clear? How did botanical science begin in India? The sloka starts like this in Vrikshayurveda. Vane Chaitarate Ramye Sameta Hurvekamanaha Bharadwajadaya Sarve Yechanye Manishuttamaha Jnatu Vichyattaha Paprachuhu Parashara Mahashaya Prishtena Munibhi Sarvai Parasharo Bravitataha Atharvangam Pravakshami Brahmokta Vrikshaviti. This is a beautiful verse. It tells not only the science of botany, it also tells the philosophy of botany. I will tell you that also. This shloka simply means that all the rishis under the chairmanship of Sage Bharadwaja assembled in the forest of Chaitarata and all of them asked Sage Parashara to let them know about plants and have been as per rishis. Thus Parashara said that I am going to reveal to you the knowledge of plants which has been revealed to me by Brahma in Atharva Veda. Now, botanical knowledge of plant. Look at the fantastic self-effacing attitude of scientists and rishis at that time. Today, when you discover something, your name will appear 10 times first, your place of birth 50 times, is it clear? Address 75 times, and then what you say in one paragraph. Correct?
Yeah.
But our people, our scientists, they thought that who wants knowledge? Not mortals, not human beings. The one and the only owner of all the knowledge is God Almighty. I am not the owner. So when I am not the owner, how can I misuse that knowledge? How can I encash that knowledge? And they used to think, for example, I give in this place, you turn the tap, this place. Of course, in Bangalore, you might not get water also. In case you get water, suppose the tap says, I am giving you water. There cannot be anything more foolish than that. If there is no water in Kaveri, if it goes to Tamil Nadu, hundreds of taps will not give you water. Right? Now, tap is what? Tap is only a conduit because everybody cannot go to KRS and take water. Is it clear? So our rishis used to think, I am thankful to God Almighty because He has chosen me as a conduit, He has chosen me as an instrument to reach the knowledge to you. I am satisfied with this. I don't want any more merit. That's why He says, He researched on botany, He wrote a botany book, but what does He say? Atharvangam Pravakshami Brahmoktam Vrikshaviti. When people question me in some of my lectures, how do you know which Parashara is? Is Parashara 1 or 2? What is his date? What is the proof for his date? I said, if Parashara were to think some 3000 years back, after 3000 years, some fellow would question my name. He would not have bothered at all. He says, don't bother about me, at least learn what I have told you. Because he never benefited from that. Is it clear? So, this is the self-effacing attitude. At the end of my lecture, I will tell you, we had one modern scientist with the same attitude, Jagdish Chandra Bose. I will tell you his seminal contributions, where modern life, as you know today, would have been impossible but for J.C. Bose. I will tell you later. So, in this Vrikshayurveda of Parashara, I will mention only 1 or 2 facts. You have heard of sun. The bodies of all organisms are made up of tiny components called cells, and they are not visible to naked eye. They are microscopic. And they say that Robert Hooke, when he took the cross section of a cork, is it clear? He found honeycomb-like compartments. It is in Latin. It is called cellula. That is why he gave the name cells. But essentially, Robert Hooke was describing a dead cell. Only the contours were visible, no contents inside, because it is a dead cell. Look at this description of Parashara. Patre rasakoshaha apari sankheyaha santi. te dve kalaveshtitena, te rasashrayishcha, te ranjakayukta, te anava. And remember, this is not a religious book. This is not a ritualistic book. He was dealing with only a technical book, that is Vrikshayurveda. Patre means leaf. Rasakoshaha aparisankhya. Look at the name. Rasakosha aparisankhya. They are present in innumerable numbers. Te dve kalaveshtitena. They have two boundaries. Te rasashraya. They have a satin side. Te ranjakayukta. They have a coloring mat. Because I was describing the leaves of the cells of leaf. Te anava. They are not visible to naked eye. I still remember very vividly. I gave the first lecture a few aspects of botany in ancient India in the Sydney 13th Botanical Congress in Australian University, Sydney University. One person stood up and asked, because there are a number of, because all botanists will gather once in 6 years in the different parts of the world. One professor from New Zealand, I mentioned this also in one of my interviews to Deccan Around, the roots of self-theory in ancient Indian literature. She is a lady, New Zealand professor. She stood up and asked me, in a sarcastic way of course, Dr. Rajan, do you mean to say that ancient Indians invented microscope also? Obviously to see a sun microscope is necessary. So she thought that I am talking some balderdash, she is going to catch me. But I had done my homework. Basically, because I am a modern scientist, I have to give evidences. Without evidences, I don't mention anything at all. And I am very conservative about my facts. Is it clear? If I know 100, I will mention only 5 with full evidences. Then I told her, Madam, the evidence is in the verse itself. How? I said, you can think in 2 diameter terms. One is the whole thing is nonsense. He is just the blabbering of a rishi. Another is there is an evidence. Where is the evidence? She said. You read the last word. They are not visible to naked eye. Now look at the proof of them telling you. Suppose I say there are bacteria here, you agree. Correct? But do you see bacteria? No. But you catch a bit of air, put it on a culture medium, lo and behold, bacteria will grow. That means this here consists of bacteria. When did you come to this conclusion? You were able to describe or you were able to make something invisible become visible through an instrument. Otherwise, what is not seen is non-existent. You don't say the things are visible and non-visible. When do you use this entire epithet, adjective invisible? When you have made the invisible visible, use the term and then you say it is invisible, it can be made visible. Now, this man describes microscopic things and to prove he says these are not visible to naked eye. Don't you think it is a normal inference that they must have had some means of instrumental magnification? Otherwise, you could have described everything. He need not have mentioned, then of course you could have said, maybe it is imagination. Why should he use that last word invisible? Then she had to agree, yes, she said, all along we thought that biological history belongs only to Greeks and Romans. And another person from the US was agreeing, I think he will write a book on that. And I also give one more example. At that time, there was Charaka, who was a contemporary of Parashara. He was describing blood. Of course, he was not describing RBCs, he was describing some components. There also he says, I see certain creamy-like thing in this. Is it clear? And he describes, they vrittakara, they are rounded in shape. Te apada, they do not have appendages. Te anavaha, they are not visible to naked eye. Now, I don't think there can be any clearer description. Suppose you say, why did he not talk about microscope? That is a foolish argument because it's not a book on technology. When you mention some principles of physics in this one, use it. That doesn't mean you have to put the entire physics chapter there. Is it not so? You use it only as evidence. Is it not so? Or when you mention the chemical properties, you should not start from Mendeleev's periodic classification of the elements. Right? And then they had to... No. I was coming to this. I will tell you. Correct. I will also tell you one thing. Somebody, I remember in another lecture in India, somebody said, it's a hoax. Which one? The entire lecture is a hoax. It's a modern composition. They have written so many things. Then I say, if it is a hoax, if it is written by a botanist, for example, like me, who knows both botany and science, nothing would have